Ordinary Habits, Extraordinary Life is about mastering simple things in everyday life to expand your views, access more of your untapped potential, and evolve ordinary habits into an extraordinary life. Here is your host, Maria Bailey.
Welcome to Ordinary Habits, Extraordinary Life, where we dive into life's big questions with simple, real, and intimate stories from masters in their field, where we invite you to be curious, be inspired, and simplify the way. Today we have Lisa Downing, an internationally acclaimed solo piano performer, 3-time Emmy Award winner, 7-time Emmy Award nominee, top 5 Billboard artist, award-winning solo piano recording artist, innovative music composer, soul-touching storyteller, proud member of the Alliance of Women Film Composers. Lisa is a timeless woman with a twinkle in her eye, extraordinary at listening to the sound of the world and turning it to a melodic invitation. Don't be fooled, this is a firecracker and a rebel at the piano, connecting heaven and earth in a soulful art form to help you remember the true, the good, and the beautiful. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so excited. Like I said to you earlier, I had so much fun learning about you, and oh my goodness, little did I know everything and all the places you've been. So excited to have you here.
Your introduction made me blush.
Oh. And I was trying to make it quick. But so to jump into it, like seriously, I was so shocked that your childhood, your teenage years, how you got into music and where you've been. So let me ask you this. So you've been a metalhead teenager.
Yeah.
You were a pastor later in your early 20s, right? You're a mother, a magnificent performer, and actually rebel at the piano, right? Like I heard like the genre that you create should be a genre in itself. Your wife, right? So what is when we talk about habits and masters in their field, I was thinking, what would you say is the constant that is true in all of these areas that you walk? What would be the one thing that is true in all of them?
Well, I think probably multitasking is the constant throughout my whole life, really, throughout childhood and my teenage years and adulthood. I mean, and I was a single mom for a long time and right. For about 14 years. And so out of necessity, I had to be a pretty good multitasker, to keep everything, all the dishes spinning all at once. However, I don't know that multitasking is always my friend. It's certainly gotten me through a lot of stuff, but in a way it can sort of be my nemesis, particularly at the piano, when, really being present and really focusing on one thing is what's necessary. And because I have this habit of multitasking, it kind of can take me away from the present moment sometimes.
Right. So it's so interesting because now I'm thinking, well, so then if we break it down into habits, they're sort of like the habits that we have had to create for necessity, mm-hmm. right? To survive. Maybe right. Even I'm going to call it like the surviving habits. But then you talked about this other habit of having to be present, to be focused, to have the one thing. So maybe even there, is there a discernment between these two activities or habits?
There is, and I'm not sure that I could even call presence a habit yet. It's something that I'm striving for, and
right.
And occasionally I'll tap into it, and I wish it could be a habit, but it's not quite there yet.
Right.
Things that I can do to cultivate that, that presence of mind and heart mm-hmm. is meditation for sure. Right. And all different kinds of of meditation. If you've ever read Wherever You Go, There You Are, that book?
I think so. Sounds
Yeah,
familiar. Yeah.
yeah. And John Kabat-Zinn, I think, is the author.
Oh yeah, of course, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
And so, sort of his idea of meditation isn't necessarily just sitting and, calming in a singular space, although that's certainly something that's a necessary thing to do and cultivate, but that just, having the idea of walking through a door, that's the thing that reminds you, oh, that's right, I can be present. Or you can identify lots of different things that will remind you to be present right then. And interestingly enough, I just got an Apple Watch for my birthday, and it has like a little thing, a little alert that says breathe. And that's
Right.
one of the things that has been helping me is
Right.
just allowing that. Sometimes it's annoying, the little breathe reminder, but if I just take a deep breath right then, that reminds me to stay present.
And so how is that different? So I hear that being present is a habit that you aspire to, right? Not there yet, but it's a practice. Maybe we could even describe, actually, since I just said that, since you, in your journey of becoming, which I would say an exquisite artist of piano, right? Like, what is the difference between the practice, like when you're practicing, like you're practicing now presence, or somebody would be practicing the piano, to when it's a habit? What is the difference, or what is that arc?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that yet, because I still am battling it. I battle my multitasking sort of, well, we'll say a habit, but when I'm at the piano, when I'm performing, I still struggle with, distractions that happen. So what I have done, instead of what I'm beginning to do in terms of, practicing presence, that what I did do was to have like all kinds of distractions when I'm practicing piano. Like I would have the TV going while I'm practicing, and that helped me focus. Or then I would take it up a level. So then I would hear music, like I would play music, other music than what I was playing, and then try to make myself focus on that. And then I would take it even up another notch, that I would play a recording of the actual piece that I was playing, but out of sync, and then try to play with, because then I have to force myself to ignore the sounds that are going on around me. And so that's what I do to practice before a performance, to get but I think there's an easier way than that.
But our listeners can't see me, but literally my jaw, like I'm holding my jaw and I have goosebumps.
Yeah. So, and that's one of the things that I share with my students, because that's one of the things that's so important to me, because all of my life I've had stage anxiety, like really deep stage anxiety. And what I thought for a lot of years was that it was only me, that something was wrong with me because I felt that way. And what I've learned as I play in that I do performances with other people, famous people that have been my idols, that everybody does. And so what I've noticed in my private piano instruction is that my students also feel like they're the only ones, that there's something wrong with them, because and it's like, and I think the pattern of other professional musicians tends to be to pretend like that's not true, that they don't have stage anxiety to the general public, right? And so my sort of mission is to just be real about that, and real with my students, that I'm just as terrified as you are, and it's just something you have to learn how to live with. That there's going to be adrenaline, there's going to be anxiety, it's just going to happen. I'm not sure. People say that you outgrow it. I never have. It's just every performance is that way. And the more I do it, the more used to it I am. But it doesn't mean that it went away. It just means I'm more used to the fact that it's happening. And so that's what I try to impart to my students and give them sort of these tools, like I was just telling you, these random tools of, overcoming the distractions, so you can get up on stage and play your music.
So again, I'm still stunned, and I'll tell you why, because I don't know, rarely have I met people that instead of trying to fix the thing that bothers them, they lean into it. And that's what I'm listening to you. What I said. See, I'm kind of disorganized right now. It's like, all right, I'm trying to organize myself again, because it's almost like you came up with the unexpected answer. Right. So if you have stage anxiety, instead of trying to work up your courage, it's like, no. Actually put all those elements, put all those things, and actually grow the muscle, or grow the ability to be that. So I'm going to throw you not a curveball, but so let's in the more practical, because not everybody is a pianist, or not everybody's going to be the artist that actually goes on stage. Maybe even executives could translate this to when you give a presentation. So even that might translate. So if you're giving a presentation, put all those distractions, right? But how about, and I don't know if you have the answer, but how about like when you were mothering? Mm-hmm. So are there any similarities on that moment where you needed to attend to or be focused, or, and something like this, you had sort of like a way of bringing yourself in to motherhood, or single motherhood?
Yeah, it's motherhood was a different thing. It seems like the instinct of mothering was there in a different way than it is for me with performing and composing. It was just there. And my son, he's 33 now, but he is sort of on the spectrum. And that meaning that the spectrum being sort of anything from, bipolar disorder to schizophrenia, and everything in between, Asperger's syndrome, all of that. And it's interesting because to label something like that is sort of inaccurate, because each individual is just so different. They have like different parts of it. And my son, his name is Andrew, and he is, he's an extremely high functioning man that is on the spectrum at some point, right? And that gives him all kinds of different challenges. When he was a kid, he was very ADHD too, in addition to being diagnosed with bipolar disorder. But it's a different kind of bipolar disorder. It wasn't like what you think, like, oh, this is so great, let's do these weird things and have, and then, it was, he had like what they call bipolar 2. And so the manic tended to be sort of a manic depression almost. It was an interesting deal that I had to sort of interpret what would be the most effective way to parent him. I was also his piano teacher. He plays 6 instruments.
I read that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
alto, so many things. Yeah.
Oh yeah. He is something else, but he's a very kinetic learner. And so like with a lot of my students, my piano students, I have to address each individual person and sort of assess what it is and how they learn the best. And everybody is so incredibly different. And so mothering him required that, and I didn't really have vocabulary for any of this back then. But I had to sort of create different stations for him to give him a different kind of headspace so that, he could have 6 different things that he could go to when he needed to change his headspace. And that actually works really well for me too. And maybe I'm sort of on the spectrum as well, which is where this sort of multitasking thing comes in for me. And a little bit OCD, both of us. And I like to say that really it should be called CDO, because that would be in alphabetical order. And that
totally.
Because I'm just a little bit that way. But the mothering thing was very fluid. That was very in the moment. I had to connect with him and keep our hearts sort of tied together so that I could be effective in whatever it was that he seemed to need. And not in a helicopter parent kind of way,
right? But
just in a intuitive kind of a way.
Right.
It wasn't easy.
Right. Again, so much beautiful imagery of both like the way that you bring all the distractions to yourself to kind of come together in yourself. And then the imagery of you putting out there all the activities for your son. And yet you were coming from that very centered place of I don't know, there's something here that I find very poetic, maybe, like the singular, like wanting to be present in this, in the focus, in the moment, the one thing, by attending to several things, but being relaxed with the many things around. Like maybe he could also find that settling in himself by having all these activities around him.
Right. And appropriate activities, because I think sometimes kids get into trouble that are like this because they need so much other stuff going on that they can change channels in a way.
Right.
And if they don't have that, they'll create their own channels. And sometimes they're appropriate and sometimes they're not. And I know that when Andy was little, and he was little, but he was in 4th grade. And he had a teacher that understood that about him. One of the very few teachers that understood that. So she would, he would always get in trouble for disrupting class or falling out of the chair or coughing too loud or sneezing too loud or just being disruptive. And so what she did was she had him sit in a chair that was close to the water fountain. And when she could feel him starting to have that sort of disruptive tendency, she'd go, Andy, I think, wouldn't you like to get a drink of water right now? Right. And so he could get up and get a drink of water and come and sit down, and then he was fine.
Be focused again.
Right. So he didn't have to create that other space to be in for himself.
What would be an example of well, I don't want to say inappropriate activity, but an activity that didn't serve?
Well, fortunately, he didn't get into too much of that, but I'm going to imagine that.
So actually, can I reframe that? Because I noticed like we're talking about your son. Let's bring it back to you. What would be an activity that you do that that it doesn't serve you? Because again, I think if I just bring us back into focus, I think we started with multitasking, right? And then we broke it down to, well, the habit of being present or the practice of multitasking, and either you're in survival or actually the things that you aspire to. And then in that, we came to this learning more deeply of, but what does it serve? And these activities that actually bring you into focus. Did I map that correctly? I just want to make sure that.
So I'm going to guess that. So your question, it sounds like, is what activities might in my life be less effective in my pursuing a goal?
Right. I think now we're in the discernment, right? Like, so what I'm learning from you is like, okay, so when Lisa wants to be focused, right? Lisa creates these masterpieces, or Lisa created spaces for her son so he could learn. So I'm what I'm learning from you is like, okay, so if I'm distracted, or if I have this energy and I actually want to focus to bring something forward, right? One way is that I can actually bring those elements around me and become used to them, so I can be focused around them.
Mm-hmm.
But now I want to learn. It's like, well, what should I be? What should I watch out for? Right? What are activities that maybe from your experience I can also think, oh, right, something I should be watching out for?
Well, number one right now is Facebook.
Yeah.
Right? That's a huge distraction for me. And I can get sucked into that so easy, just scrolling through. And because I have like 5,000 friends on Facebook, and I don't know all of them personally, but I've come to know a lot of these people, and a lot of them are my colleagues. A lot of them are other musicians, or, whatever. And then I just get sucked into it. I start commenting, or and I want to know this stuff about these people, that whole need for community and socializing. And particularly since COVID and stuff, I really got attached to that, but that kind of, it sucks the creativity out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it literally does. And certainly there needs to be some kind of connection on social media and on the internet, but that can be where I lose a lot of time.
And how do you notice that it sucks your creativity? Like, what are the signs?
Just that I'm not motivated. I get off and then I'm just not motivated anymore. I think that, one of the things that I've learned for myself is that boredom is the mother of creativity. It's like, if I'm bored, it's like, then I start thinking of, okay, what can I do next? What could be, but if I'm not bored and I'm like sucked into, looking at Facebook and commenting on posts and whatever, and then I don't even really realize how much time has gone by. So like 90 minutes could go by, and then I get done, and then it's like, I don't really feel like, maybe I'll go get dinner, or maybe I'll go, I don't think of the positive things that I could be doing. I'm not motivated to do those things once I get offline. I think that I also use it because of this multitasking thing. And it's more than multitasking. It's just like there's all kinds of things going on in my brain all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's a little crazy in there. It's a little crazy in there. I mean, there's music going on, there's conversations going on, there's a lot going on. And sometimes it's a little much for me. And I can use TV just to turn it on. Like, I don't have to watch it, just as long as there's something else going on in the background that makes it so that I don't have to hear all the stuff going on in my head. Sounds like I need therapy, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, actually what I was becoming quiet because I'm realizing that, funny enough, in this interview, there's actually a lot of sound and a lot of noise in the background. I would imagine somewhere in your street or something. So I'm actually having, even right now, and I would encourage our listeners right now, how is the noise out or in the background of your sound affecting our attention to listening to you? Maybe it's distracting, like instead of listening to you, people are we're wondering like, what is it? Or maybe they're frustrated. I'm finding that I'm having to actually be more still and be more acutely listening to you, so I'm not distracted by the sounds. So anyway, I was just chuckling here that we're talking about distractions, and we're talking about even how to use that in order to be even more focused. And it's happening right now. Right now.
How perfect is that? That's so serendipitous, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and now that you brought that up, what I find really interesting is that, so I for years, decades, I played in restaurants, hotels and restaurants and country clubs and stuff where I was background music, and people were doing, they're talking, they're drinking, plates are getting clicked and dropped and whatever is happening. And it almost provided a cover for me, that extraneous sound so that I could play without being freaked out because people were listening. And what I notice is that when I'm on stage, everyone is silent, right? They're looking at me, they're waiting, they're anticipating, they're expecting something. And that's the thing that freaks me out. So to your point and to answer your question about distractions, like what's going on outside my window, is it almost provides a cover because, I'm aware that it's going on, but it's, it's kind of calming in a weird way.
Well, again, what I'm noticing is that there's a choice, right? Like, I can be bothered by the sound in the background and distracted by what you're saying. I could decide to focus on what you're saying and kind of fade out the sound in the background. So there's choice. Maybe I would. Good point. At this point in the conversation, it's like we have choice. And in an exercise, and now I'm wondering about the habit, right? That if the habit is the habit of choice of, okay, well, now I'm going to relax my attention and I'm going to be distracted. I'm going to be on Facebook. I'm just going to flow. And then now I'm just going to gather myself up, right? And I have a choice to kind of gather myself up and not in, what's the word in English? Kind of not in exclusion of all the world, because the world is always happening. Maybe sometimes we are more acutely aware because the sounds are louder, or the kids are louder, or bigger, or the messes are bigger. But the world is active all the time, and so we just choose to gather ourselves in spite of all the happenings.
Right.
I love this. Yeah, right. Choice.
Yeah, it's a lot like that poster, if you've ever seen that poster of the lighthouse, and then there's the ocean swirling around it, but the lighthouse is solid. And that's what I strive for in my practice, is to try to be that lighthouse in the midst of the chaos. But sometimes I'm not always that successful. I get caught in the chaos more often than not, for sure.
So in this moment, is there chaos around you, around us? Like, are you the lighthouse right now? Or what are you listening to in this moment? What's happening?
Yes, there is a lot of sort of interpersonal chaos in my life right now. And not just social interpersonal, but just in my job. And there's just a lot of stuff swirling about me in this exact moment. And so, so right now I can focus on what we're talking about. And I am aware that stuff is happening around me, and that is going to require my attention as soon as we're done with this interview and stuff. But right now I can, and so those are the moments that I hope to sort of carry with me into the rest of my life.
Right.
It's so easy to forget that part.
So I'm going to gently and lovingly challenge you a little bit here, because you say you want to aspire to be present, but actually you are right now, it seems like. So there's a storm, but you are right now. I mean, our listeners can't see you, but your presence and your eyes and your mannerisms tells me that you're right here with me or with us, right? And giving of yourself, like you're fully present.
Yeah.
So at least it's happening right now.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Absolutely. And of course, then, like I say, the challenge is to take this with me. And I'll be able to a little bit. And now that we've had this conversation, maybe I'll even be able to do it even more.
Well, so then this is where a little bit of the challenge is like, okay, so let's break it down like here, because in some ways, maybe I believe we can only be responsible for this moment. Well, the next moment, we don't know. And we don't know how loud the distractions are going to be. And truthfully, you don't even know if you're going to be alive in the next moment. So we're only responsible for this moment. And in this moment, you are being present. So what I get curious is like, how are you gathering yourself? How are you being the lighthouse? So if I'm curious about you, how does Lisa in this moment is able, in spite of the storm, be here? What is that like, that practice?
Well, part of it is just that I am such an incredible narcissist that it's because we're talking about me.
Well, yeah,
right?
Why not? Of course. Oh,
yeah, and so this is fun for me. I love to talk about me and my thoughts, and it's like it's pretty easy to stay focused when that's the situation.
Well, let me reframe that. I mean, by the way, I applaud you accepting that you're a narcissist, that you love talking about your shit. And if our listeners could see you're beaming, right? You're glowing, your skin, like you guys should see her. It's just glowing. So, but if I can reframe that though, you said this is fun for you. So, yes. Well, for an introvert, maybe talking about themselves is not fun.
Right.
So, but something is fun. So maybe it's something about attention or focus or presence is more attainable when you connect to fun. I would imagine that playing the piano is fun.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. It's not always fun. You just have to, if you're a pro, you just have to do what you need to do, whether you feel like it or not, kind of. But there is something about desire and determination. Because what I noticed too is that I've been recently doing a fair amount of film scoring. And so, you probably, I don't know if you can see it, but this is my studio. So I've got like three monitors here and my keyboard and all the stuff. And when I'm doing film scoring, that's another place like Facebook that when I sit down and I think, okay, I'm going to work on this piece. And then it's 4 hours later, all of a sudden. And it's like, and that's what a lot of people call being in the zone.
Right.
And
or
it's
the flow state, no?
Right. And it's very linked to desire and fun. Fun is an interesting concept. And a lot of this is semantics, right? But I used to think that when I was a kid, I used to think fun was like at an amusement park at Elitch's, and I thought that was fun. If I could just go to Elitch's, that amusement park, I would be having fun all the time. So when I'm doing film scoring, it's fun, but it's different. It's, boy, I don't have another word for it though. It's engaging, it's intriguing, it's interesting, it's all consuming. Language is so limiting anyway, and it's hard to describe in words what the actual emotion is, but there's something about the desire, and then coupled with the determination. Right. Because sometimes you can have the desire and you're not motivated, but if you're determined, it's like, I'm gonna make this work. I can visualize what the sound will be that I'm gonna love.
Visualize.
And so then that sort of carries the desire, and determination is the bridge to the goal of whatever that is. And without any one of those three, I think things tend to kind of fall apart. You got to have all of those things, all those elements.
The fun, desire, determination, and I guess imagination to visualize.
Well, certainly imagination, but the desire and the motivation and determination to stick with it, and the imagination to visualize whatever the goal is that you're trying to achieve. So yeah, there's a lot of elements there, isn't there? Perfect for a multitasker.
Well, you keep saying multitasker, but now given the story that you told about your son and how you were describing the lighthouse. I don't know. This would be a longer conversation if it's multitasking or it's actually in some ways an awareness of so many things, right? And having needing to be engaged or all those things. So there is this single thing. Again, we go back to the multitasking and the one thing. And so for the one thing to exist, there also needs to be some maybe motion around you. I don't know. And maybe it's personality.
It could be. The things that keep me sort of going. And it's different things, different elements of the different aspects that keep me motivated to do each one of those things, if that makes any sense at all. It's, for instance, so I do a lot of graphic design because I have to. A lot of the things I do I had to learn how to do just because I had to. So I have to make, posters and marketing pieces and stuff for performances I'm doing with either just on my own as a solo artist or with other people. And so I do a lot of that graphic designing. I was just talking to my husband about this yesterday. Part of what kept me motivated for doing stuff like that, doing graphic design, is because I love seeing my name in print.
I love you. I love your honesty. Seriously.
It's true. And so that kept me motivated to learn how to do it because I wanted to see it, like see myself be cool or whatever. And
right.
And so, that's just one aspect of it, so we're talking about mothering. And so maybe when Andy was little and he was, agitated or just so energetic or whatever, that the thing that kept me motivated was to create a space where he would be calm because I needed him to be calm.
Right.
Right. And so each aspect is like it has a different motivator behind it, a different thing it plugs into that keeps it charged.
You in this point of the conversation, it's connecting back to what you were saying of boredom, because what I notice in my coaching practice and with my clients, that the issue is connecting. People are not even aware of what they need. They're so busy, and there's the activity. And so maybe we go back to what you were saying, where it's the activity that is not appropriate, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the activity that doesn't allow you to either listen or feel or be attentive to what is it that you need or what is it in service of what you're doing.
Right.
Because I'm hearing the motivation being connected to, well, you need Andrew, right? Your son.
Right.
Andrew to be calm, or you need to create this poster to let yourself be known, or even you need acknowledgement. You need to be acknowledged. You love to see your name there, or you need to feel yourself through, like right now we're talking about you. So there's a way like we feel ourselves, we get to know ourselves by speaking about ourselves with others. So there's a need behind that. So maybe also, again, if we break it down to what comes even before the physical habit, the doing, it's more of an internal connection to, well, what do I need right now? Right?
What do I desire?
What do I desire?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Yeah. And music the same way. It's about communicating. It's about connecting. It's about being heard, being seen, but being heard. And to be an effective communicator is hugely important to me. And one of the things that I try to do with my music, or I don't try to do it, it just sort of happens, is to communicate a specific story. The music happens a lot, like it comes in all different ways.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's tactile, it's kinetic, you know, like how the keys feel under my fingers. And it's like, ooh, that made a cool sound when I made this motion, right? But a lot of times it's something that's happening in my head. I can hear the music and full orchestration and everything. And for a long time before all this digital stuff, I had to sort of condense that music and use that I heard in my head and use whatever limited skills I had on the piano to imitate what it was that's in my head that was just there. It's like this universal, infinite stream of music that's happening all the time. And I just had to get to a place where I could hook into it and bring it into the world. And I think that's why they call it a piece of music, because it literally is just a piece of this infinite stream that's going on all the time. And if you can get into a space or a vibe or whatever you call it and hook into a piece of that stream, you can bring it into the world. And for a long time, even after my first album, it felt weird to say that I composed the music for it, because it was like I was hearing it on the radio or something, and I was just imitating what was already there. It wasn't like a lot of effort went into constructing it or something, you know, it was just there already before me. And I know you're a visual artist, and I'm curious, do you have that same thing? Like you see it in your head and then you make it happen?
I love, thank you for asking me, because I can't tell the difference. You know, what's the name of the tribe in Peru? I can't remember the name of the tribe. For them, sound and form are the same. They can't distinguish between. Right. Do you remember the name of the tribe?
I don't, but I've heard that theory.
So the sound, and so they sew the icaros. They call them the icaros. And they're actually, you know, and a lot of people that have gone to Peru have, you know, mantelpieces and whatever, and they just look cool, and they have really bright colors. But actually, they are in some ways like scores of music. Like they are sounds. Right. So they sew, although it's being lost. So now some of them sew it. They know the sewing pattern, but they can't hear it anymore. But usually on when they do, usually it comes in ayahuasca journeys. So the shaman will sing the icaro, right? But there is actually a sewing pattern that has been kept, and that's what's being passed down. And sometimes these icaros are passed down, you know, like they're just the same icaros, but then a new icaro will come up, and it's that thing of listening, you know, like the medicine is singing to them, and then they're singing it to others. Right. So my painting is like that. It's something like but actually I would say even kinetic. You add, it's like it's a feeling of blue that also has emotion, but also is singing to me. It has a sound.
Wow.
I could, when I touch one of my paintings, I could sing it to you. Maybe not singing, sounds too beautiful, but I can tell you the sounds. I can tell you what sort of like that sounds like.
Yes.
And feels like, and then that gets translated into color and movement. But I absolutely know what you're talking about, and I practice it like that, right? Like when I face the canvas, it's like it's both coming together, the sound and the movement all coming together into some color in the canvas, and I just let it speak. I also don't believe that I paint. I'm drawing a map of something.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. You know, and people connect to that literally vibration in so many different ways. Like I have a good friend of mine, pianist, has a different way of connecting with the piano. Like she sees the geometric patterns of the black and white. and she can put them together because of the geometric patterns. And then there's other people that I know that see the colors of different notes.
Right.
And then there's a name for that. There's a name for that behavior, that way of thinking about sound. That translates into color.
Yeah, I don't know the name.
And I can't think of the name of it. I'll have to look it up and I'll text it to you.
Well, I love like when you said that sometimes you, when you're playing, it just felt good in your fingers to do that. Yeah. And then that translates into song. So that's like the kinetic to the sound, right?
Exactly. Well, it isn't everything. Vibration, every single thing that there is, if there are things, which if you're in the quantum field theory, there's no things anyway, but that everything is a vibration, and you know, more rapid vibrations turn into light, and there's everything in between. You know, there's the solid, which are really low vibrations. Then there's the things that humans can hear, you know, organic, you know, beings can hear in sound. And then there's color, which is all different kinds of vibrations. And then pure light, which is just even faster vibrations. And then there's, you know, the whole theory that all of the planets, the harmony of the spheres, that all the planets are vibrating. The sun says Om, right? Yeah. And just, we could talk all day about that.
all day. And here I want to also for our listeners and for myself as well, like I wouldn't call myself a singer, right? And even though in the intimacy of myself, like sometimes I ride my bike and when nobody's around me and I'm in the middle of nowhere, I'll just start yapping whatever sound I can, you know, and it's just so liberating. What would you say about the difference of I guess I'm encouraging our listeners. Like, I think what I want to say is that right now we're exploring in terms of habit is sort of like a way in where you can touch a certain kind of aliveness. I know I'm putting a whole bunch of new words to this, but the way I would translate what we're talking about is like touching a certain aliveness that is happening in the world all the time. And whatever way is yours to touch it, whether it is visual, kinetic, hearing, the geometric, whatever it is, to maybe slow down enough or bring your attention to it and listen to it. And I love how I opened this podcast saying like you're extraordinary at listening to the sounds of the world, because that I feel that's what I heard in your music, that there's sort of like that comes from listening, like you're playing because you're listening. So anyway, I'm getting lost here in this comment. What I was going to say is like, what would you say as a music teacher for those who believe they're not musically oriented, right? How is this touching the sounds of the world, or what is the benefit? Or I don't know if I'm asking the question correctly, but how can we normalize this and make it accessible to others, and why?
Well, I think it all boils down to belief. Because the truth is that we're all musicians. The truth is we're all creatives. We just are. And we're either creating intentionally or unintentionally. Okay. We're either creating what we desire or we're creating what we don't desire. You know, it's like everything is about that. And we are just all creatives, you know, as a noun.
And what would you say to somebody that is no, that's BS. Of course, I'm not a creative. I'm not a musician. What are you talking about?
Right.
What is your evidence that I am a musician or I am musically oriented?
It's not even necessarily about musicianship. It's about creativity. And what I say to my students a lot of times, you know, people come to me and they understand how to read music, but they want to. They think they want to be able to create their own music, but they don't know how, right? And a lot of that is what one would term as improvisation. They're like, oh, I can't improvise. You know, I can't make up anything. And it's like, of course you can. You're making up this conversation right now. You didn't have a script, right? When you came in, it's all improvisation. So you are creating this. This is what you're doing. And so that's the proof, because you don't walk around with a script all day long. You're improvising, you're creating.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm smiling. Of course, we're improvising our conversations. We're improvising our walk.
Right.
We're of course, we can't control everything. We're improvising. Absolutely.
Right. And that's just another name for creating.
Right.
And you can focus your attention on specific aspects of creating or improvising. You can, be having this talk, or you can learn how to do it and have tools to do it at the piano or at the guitar or a kazoo or
right.
or painting
or writing
or writing, being athletic. You can create new gymnast moves, and you can that's what we are creative entities. We can't help it, we can't stop it. The trick or the key is to decide what it is, that be aware that you're a creator and decide what it is you want to create, because you are creating something, whether you know it or not.
Lisa, since we are creators and we're improvising and manifesting, what did you improvise in this conversation that surprised you?
That's a really good question. What did I improvise? I think I was just the thoughts that were going past me about, like, the gymnast, what I just said. I was thinking about, what is her name? Biles, the gymnast that's doing all this crazy stuff. Anyway, I've seen her on Facebook, because I spend so much time on Facebook and and watched her routines. And so that was just, I hadn't had that specific thought about gymnasts and athleticism is also a creative endeavor. That was one of the things. There's a bunch of stuff. I'd have to go back and think about what it was that I was improvising, but that was the most recent thing. Was just, that was an original thought, that athleticism is a creative behavior.
Right. I think for me, it was the moment, like, I really got disorganized when you said, no, I start putting distractions all over me, around me, and the TV, so I can play. I love, because I would say, even it's so refreshing, when you're disorganized and your script, like the planned script, or the how you behave, you're behaving the way that that you will behave, and suddenly you get disorganized. If you have the right attitude, it's actually like giggling, because you're kind of, you trip over yourself and you go, oh my God, I'm off script right now, right? And I think that was my moment in this conversation. I didn't know what to say. I was like, I didn't expect that answer. Let me gather myself again. And I was giggling, and still, that was kind of like the feeling of the rest of the it set a tone, I think, to my connection with you, because I felt even a little mischievous of, well, if we broke the script so early on in the conversation, the sky is the limit. So
that's fun. Well, and there's a famous pianist, I wish I could tell you who it was, that said that there are no wrong notes. There are no wrong notes. It's all just a path, and that's a hard thing for me to get in to wrap my head around, wrap my arms around.
Right.
Because I mean, beyond all the other neuroses that we were discussing about me, one of them is perfectionism. And what does that even mean? That's not even a thing. And I intellectually can understand that, but in practice, and in life practice, but piano practice, I'm very attached to the notion of perfection, or at least as close to it as I can get. It's like, so I come across a chord. I'll tell you this story, and I think I was telling you this the other day when I was out on my bike, but I was playing a concert in Albuquerque. And there's this piece that I've written. It's called Make Believe, and it's about my son. He was like 3 years old, and he would sit next to me on the floor by the piano, and he'd play with all kinds of stuff, and he would make, flying teddy bears and flying buildings. And so I'm watching him do this, and I'm creating this song as I'm watching him do this behavior. Called it Make Believe. So I'm playing this song at this concert, and I got lost. It's complicated. It's a complicated piece. But I got lost, absolutely lost. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, okay, C minor. What comes next? G. And I'm just playing whatever. And then I'm like, just end it, just end it, just end it. And I finally just ended it. And I was thinking, that's the last time I'm ever going to perform in public. That just sucked so bad. I can't believe I couldn't remember how to play that piece. It was so terrible. And I was just beating myself up. I was going to the merch table where Pete was, my husband, and he was like, selling CDs and sheet music and whatever for me. And I overheard one of the audience members say to him, she goes, well, what I really am interested in is that piece that she played called Make Believe. She goes, what album is that on? And I know Pete was just laughing like, that song she just played is not on any of these albums, right? But it just is so, what was so interesting to me, it's like I could be that off base, that outside of my idea of perfection. And yet somehow it touched somebody emotionally enough that that's the song that she chose to seek out. Yeah. This wild, it wasn't even an improvisation. It was just like, save my musical life. How do I get out of this? And that's the song. And isn't that odd and interesting and fascinating and motivating?
Well, I want to double click on what you said, outside of our idea. And I think that kind of leaves me with this invitation of the multitasking and the one thing, and how do you touch that vibration of that aliveness of the universe, of the world that is happening. Perhaps it's something about, and I'm going to make this up, but it's sort of like a habit of really like stepping out of your own idea, because perfection really is only your idea of perfection, because somebody else's idea of perfection will be different. So I think there's a beauty to that, because you say you hear the music and you want to play the music that you hear. So I can understand the accuracy of how you want to play that as you hear it. And at the same time, the possibility of what can happen in yourself and in others, how you touch others if you actually step outside your own idea.
Right. Right.
Yourself.
And then there's, you had asked a little while ago about how to touch that place. Mm-hmm. And I still can't do it at will. Like, I wish it was like magic. And I suppose some people can. I imagine that they can just like go, okay, I'm going to sit here and we're going to touch that place. And I haven't mastered that for sure. What the thing that gives me an open place is to give myself space. Like if I get away from work, get away from the office, away from the piano, really, even. And for a while, to give myself space and time. Because when I first get away, then there's all kinds of stuff going on in my head. I mean, there's commercial jingles and earworms of the stuff that other people have written, whatever is going on in my head. I have to get past that. That has to play itself out, sort of. And then when I give myself enough space, then, and it's a weird feeling because it's like I can feel it in my heart. It's like something turns. And then I can hear the music again. I can hear that stream of music again. And then it's like, it feels like I'll never forget how to do it. But I always do forget how to do it.
Well, but so this is the thing though. Thank you so much. because the way you described the way in to, because what again, I'm reframing it, but like you can't make up the thing that shows up, but you have you know how to get home.
Right. That's true.
So, and which reminds me also part of the conversation that we had, to have the appropriate activity. So, because when you say space and time, you're not taking space and time scrolling on Facebook.
No.
Because that's not going to help you.
No.
Or space and time, binging on Netflix, or,
right.
So is some sort of space and time that allows you to enter the
and
listening.
Quiet. And quiet.
Right, the quiet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we all need to, we have all our ways, like you said, like sometimes I know that, for example, my husband needs to, he shuffles a deck of cards.
Mm.
And that's his way of just like his mind, it gets involved in the cards. And then something else has room to be still and wow. think and be with. Right. So that's what I hear from you. It's like, find your own way. Also, but your own way to get out of the way,
to get out of the way.
And something, that improvisation, that some new idea to come. And whether you're a mother, whether you are an executive, whether you are an artist, everybody, well, what would you say to them? Actually, what would you say? I was gonna.
Just what you were probably getting ready to say, is that there's opportunity to improvise in whatever aspect you are experiencing in your life. And we're all different people, just like the very first thing that you introduced me. I mean, I'm a daughter, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a musician, I'm a business owner, I'm a million things.
Right.
And I enter into each one of those, we'll say categories. I don't like that. Enter into each one of those spaces in our lives, in my life, where I have to, that the most effective way to develop myself or whatever I happen to be doing in that space is to improvise.
Right.
Is to, and that has to mean, some kind of feel for where you are. And so you can engage in that because of the feeling.
Mm.
Yeah.
We all have our own music, right? Or we are all a little piece of the great music. Orchestra,
yes.
Not orchestra. How do you say the great piece?
Well, it is kind of an orchestration, and we each have our own little part, or big part to play, big parts, I mean, who's to determine if it's little or big, right? But just like, your part is the visual art, and maybe my part is, the audible kind of stuff, or the graphic arts piece,
right.
or Pete, my husband. He's driving for Uber these days, right? And so his part is to make people, if he wants people to feel comfortable and at home in the van that he's driving, and have them feel comfortable in that space while they're there. And he's never going to see him again, probably, right. but his part in that space of his life is to create comfort and peace for the people that are his passengers. And so each of us has that thing that we're creating.
Well, we go back to the creator, right? Like he's creating a moment. And
absolutely.
Lisa, it's been a pleasure to have you with us and to share your creativity, your wisdom, and your step-by-step, really, of how you get in and how you express such beautiful music. If people want to reach you, how should they find you?
You can find me on my website, which is lisadowning.com. And from there, you can find my sheet music and my CDs and all of that kind of good stuff, and my bio and whatever, and learn more about what I do, teaching and performing and stuff. You can also go to visionquestmusic.com, and that's QUEST music.com. And that's my company, that's my talent agency. And you can see all the artists that we represent. And there's about 1,200 of them, and there's little samples of their music and stuff on that website too.
Yeah. So so just to be clear, like, so you perform, so you perform also in corporate, right? Like you perform in events.
I do. I don't do that as much anymore, but I book other musicians, so bands, so pretty much everybody that you know and love in town for sure. But, and national acts I can bring to town and stuff. So I represent other artists besides myself.
Well, so I'm also hearing, if you are an artist, and maybe this sounds like the right representation for you, or even a conversation that you want to have with Lisa, it sounds like maybe a wonderful conversation to be had. And if anything at all, take a moment, really. I spent all afternoon doing this yesterday, but just take a moment, find a quiet space, find her, if you have Spotify, find her on Spotify, or, however way, and just listen. And it's truly a gift, truly, truly a gift. Lisa, again, thank you so much for
Thanks
your
for
time
having
and your
me.
wisdom.
I love this. This is so fun.
Thank you. Until next time, be curious, be inspired, and simplify the way.